In this presentation, we're going to talk about how to find your body's fat burning zone by Dr. Jeff Banas. So why do we want to find our fat burning zone, or why would we want to train in our fat burning zone? Well, there's mainly two reasons. For weight loss, to burn excess body fat, and for energy. If we could tap in our body's own fat, we will be able to supply the calories we need for training and racing and avoid bonking. And that's what we're going to talk mostly about here. We have entire different presentations on weight loss. But the primary focus of this presentation is how do we find our fat burning zone. So why would we want to burn fat in the first place? Why is fat burning so good? Well, even if you're thin, our body has more than an abundant supply of fat. And fat is the most efficient energy resource within the body. 1 gram of fat equals about 9 calories. Compare that to 1 gram of carbohydrates, 4. So we're actually getting twice as many calories from fat than we are from carbohydrates. And 1 pound of fat can provide about 3,600 calories, which is far more than people could actually burn in a single day. And when we're talking about long distance training, it's about the calories. We need those calories because we're going to run out. So we want to teach your body to burn fat more effectively, and we also want your body to burn fat more effectively at a higher range as a heart rate. So we really want to try to train yourself in a carbohydrate sparing in a fat burning machine, because as we mentioned, as far as training goes, we're generally going to run out of carbohydrates. And if you're not good at burning fat, that's not a good thing. That equals bonking. So burning fat will exercise. Okay? Well, as we mentioned, we actually want to burn fat more than carbohydrates because we'd like to preserve those carbohydrates. So if our body's beneficial at burning more fat, we'll be able to spare those carbohydrates. By improving your body's fat burning ability, it will also be possible to reduce the amount of calories you need to take in during exercise. And we all know that eating less reduces the possibility of gastrointestinal distress. So I'm sure we've all been there if we ate too much. And if we could teach our body to burn fat more effectively, that means we'll have to take in less goos. We just won't need those goos and those sugary drinks. So how do we find your fat burning zones? Well, there's two main ways. One is through VO2 Metabolic Testing or a field test. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about the VO2 Metabolic Testing first, because that'll make a little bit more sense. Again, why it's so important to teach your body how to burn fat. So when we talk about metabolic testing, okay, what we're basically doing is back in this picture back in here, is we're wearing the mask. And the mask is measuring a ratio of carbon dioxide that you're kicking out to the amount of oxygen consumed. And by knowing this respiratory quotient, we'll be able to know what you're burning as fuel at various heart rate intensities. And when we have a high RQ of a 1.0, that means you're burning mostly carbohydrates. Okay? And if we have a low RQ, or low respiratory quotient, at 0.7 or 0.85, that means your body is burning mostly fat during the exercise. And here's a note though, you could be thin and still be very not efficient at burning fat. We see this all the time in our office. So sometimes you would think this relates to weight loss, but a lot of times we have patients that will come in who are fairly lean and they're not very good at burning fat. And if they're not efficient at burning fat, that means they're going to have to cause their body to eat more during the races to avoid bonking. So when we look at the VO2 metabolic test, okay, this is what we get up on the screen. And the main thing we want to look at is this graph right up in here. This area here is your respiratory quotient. And one thing to note, if you have this test done, ask them to print out this screen for you. It's nice to have this graph, but it's nice to get this data right in here that gives us your RQ, so we can correlate that specific RQ with a specific heart rate. So when you get this, they will typically print out some predetermined heart rate zones that the system kicks out, but ask them for this data right here. Ask them to print this page out here and have all your RQs. So this green line here signifies heart rate. So this is done either on a treadmill or a bike trainer when the patient brings their bike in. And this orange line is fat. So what we basically do is we have the person on the treadmill or the trainer, and we increase the intensity or incline of the treadmill or the trainer, and we cause the heart rate to go up. And as we see here, we see this person's burning a lot of fat right here. And this would be your fat-burning zone. Okay, this is where your body's really efficient burning fat. But what we see is your heart rate gets to a point up in here, we see this fat dramatically drops off. Now, we're always going to have a threshold. At one point, your body stops burning fat. But the key is we'd like this fat-burning zone right up in here to extend all the way to the threshold. Okay? And what we see a lot of times is patients are working out right up in this area here. So if you're training for a race and you come in for in fact, I had a guy come in just a couple weeks ago. He's training for Ironman, and he's about 100 days out from Ironman. And when we did a test on him, he was right back in here. And let's say he's burning, his most efficient spot for burning fat was like around the 120. But then he tells me when he's out training, he's in the 160s. So if he's right here, getting very little bit of energy from fat, that means, like I said, he's not efficient at burning fat, and that means his body is not going to get the calories from his own fat. So he needs to be eating. So we know he needs to eat, because since he's not getting the calories from his fat and he's running at this level here, he's going to run out of energy if he's not constantly supplying a source of calories. And now, as we mentioned, the fact that he's got to eat so much increases the risk of gastrointestinal distress. So the goal, really, of this right here is to try to develop a plan where you can develop your body to burn more fat and extend this all the way down here to your threshold. A lot of people have this gap right up in here where they're really not getting the benefits of the slower aerobic fat burning, but they're really not going hard enough. And if there's kind of going up in this area, that's at mediocre, that's at chronic cardio type area. So the goal would be to develop a plan to try to extend this. So when we retest, this graph would be up here like this, and then it would continue all the way along up in here, all the way up here, and then suddenly drop down as we come into the fat burning zone. Okay? So now we're talking about field testing. If you don't have access to a VO2 metabolic test, you're going to want to do a field test. It's not as accurate, but it will get you by. So what you're basically going to do is we're going to have you warm up on the bicycle or treadmill for 10 minutes. An indoor trainer is really good, or a treadmill, just so you could go all out. Because you're going to go all out at a maximum pace for 20 minutes, and you're going to record your heart rate for that 20 minutes. So you get on your trainer, warm up for 10 minutes, and then bike all out for 20 minutes and record that average heart rate for that 20 minutes. Now what you're going to do, that average heart rate, you're going to subtract 20 beats from that heart rate, and then add and subtract 3 beats above and below that average. So example, if you had a heart rate of 160, we're doing a minus 20, which is 140. We're going to add 3, which is 143, and we're going to subtract 3, is 137. So your fat burning range is going to be 137 to 143. So once you define your fat burning zones, how often do you train in there? Well, this is where it becomes a little tricky. It depends. Depends on a lot of factors. Okay? Are you in season or off season? Do you have because for most people, now if you're not efficient at burning fat, that just means you really haven't spent a lot of time in that fat burning zone. So, and a lot of times that's at a lot of slower pace than most people are training or exercising at. So you got to play into the where are you in the season. If you're 2 months out of the race, you might not want to spend a lot of time doing a lot of slower aerobic training. So, yeah, like I said, it depends on a lot of things. I wish I could just sit there and lay out that you need to be training your fat zone, 3 times a week and doing in intervals 4 times a week. There's a lot of variables, and it's really best that you work with your coach, because like I mentioned, are you off season? Is it race season? When you actually did the VO2 test, what was your RQ? What were you burning? Were you burning all carbohydrates during your exercises? What's your weight? You need to drop weight. So there's a lot of variables, and that's why it's well worth working with your coach. I know a lot of people come in to see me, and they get the VO2 metabolic test, and they say, hey, I don't need help with any type of training plan or coaching. I just want to know where I burn fat. and then we print out that graph for them that gives them all their RQ, and then they sit down and they scratch their head because, like I said, many times they might be running at a heart rate of 160, but then it tells them they need to be at the best fat burning zone is maybe 120 or 130, and they're saying, well, I can't run this slow, and I'm 2 months out of my race. So that's why you're going to want to really work with a coach, and that's what makes the coach so valuable. Another thing about this fat burning zone, just because you're in your fat burning zone does not necessarily mean you're burning a huge number of calories, okay? In some of the weight loss presentations that we'll do on here, we'll go into a lot more detail about the weight loss, but just because you're in your fat burning zone does not mean that's where you're burning the most calories. In fact, you're not. So planning your schedule. Like I said, there's so much more involved, and it's best to work with your coach on this. So what you're going to want to do is look for the presentation that we present on planning your season, and then we'll be able to actually take this module here that we did and put it into where are you in the season so you can know when and how much time you should be spending in your fat burning zone. Now, if you have any questions, please post this in the comment section. You can contact me at this email, give me a call. If you have any questions about my coaching services about me, you can check out my website. So feel free to post your comments in the section here, and I'll do my best to answer them. Thanks. Have a great day.